The one I'm talking
Um,
about, like this apartment. They had this apartment, and it was haunted by evil. It was hungry ghosts, actually, is what I
right?
pulled from it. But it was like a Shinto version of the hungry ghost.
Oh, the Shinto's got some, and Taoism especially has some amazing fucking hells. Taoist hell. That you go to a Taoist temple, they've got like all these hell scenes painted on the walls. Like they'll have like dioramas with like plaster statues and stuff of like all these different tortures and stuff.
Goodness.
Yeah, yeah. Do like a Google search for like Shinto temple hell scenes or something like that, or not Shinto, Taoist temple hell scenes in China. They love stuff like that. I think it's kind of gruesome myself.
Now Dallas, that has to do more with China, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's a Chinese thing.
With
That affected Buddhism quite a bit in China, and of course, Chinese Buddhism affected Taoism to a certain extent too. It's funny because when Buddhism first came to China, you know, Chinese people thought, "Oh, this is just Lao Tzu. This is just Taoism. They just got it wrong. We just have to correct it a little bit." It took them a while to figure out, like, wait a minute, this is actually tackling different problems than we do.
yeah.
I think that's a big part of it too, because religions are. I mean, you've got your bicameral religions, which has to do with the stuff that we've got in history of, like, idols that would talk to people and they would obey them and this and that, and religious morality had to do with just doing what the orders were from above. What the God wants is good, what the God doesn't want is evil. There's nothing intrinsic about it. If God says kill this person, it's good, and don't kill this person because it's bad to kill that person. It has nothing to do with like there being an overriding ethical kind of an idea. But as people's minds develop, they look more for their religion. They want to answer certain questions. And that was one of the things G.K. Chesterton said about the spread of Christianity, was that the pagan religions no longer provided the kind of spiritual answers that people wanted. And that's why they turned to things like Mithraism, Christianity, Isis worship, the mystery religions. So with Buddhism is addressing the question of suffering. You're suffering. Nobody else is suffering. We're not talking about bodhisattva vows and stuff like that. That's all Mahayana gobbledygook. You're suffering, and how to basically cause it to cease your suffering, get control of your own suffering, get control of your own life. And this will, of course, cause the suffering of all those around you to diminish as well. So it's really a good thing. And more importantly, it is the only effective way that you can diminish the suffering of those around you, is to diminish your own suffering. If you try to make other people not suffer first, if you try to help other people before you help yourself, you might help them a little, but it's not going to be nearly as effective as if you help yourself first, so that you are in a very good and strong position, and then naturally the people around you are feeling better. Now with Taoism in a lot of ways was a release valve for Confucianism. And Confucianism is a very ethical, a very strict, a very socially strong kind of a more of a, like, in a lot of ways we would, again, in the West, these ideas are sometimes hard for us to think of as religions. A lot of people would say Confucianism is a philosophy, but it included religious aspects, and it had the same trust and respect that a religion has, but it's very formal. It has to do with keeping social structures firm, and you do this all your life, and you really need to reconnect with the other half of yourself, the shady side of yourself, as opposed to the sunny, the Dionysian rather than the Apollonian. And Taoism was a way of connecting with your natural self. In Taoism, like, show me your original face,
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. And this affected Chan Buddhism, which became Zen Buddhism, very, very much. With Taoism, a lot of it has to do, like with Buddhism, of being in the eternal now, being here now, and gaining the power that you have in this spot. The Taoists were not looking for nirvana, however you want to pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
They were not looking for total release from the cycle of birth and death. I don't think that they were even into like rebirth necessarily. Not all those ancient cultures were, um, but it's it answered different questions. It had different questions that it was looking at. Put it that way, than Taoism. But they're very congenial to each other in a lot of ways. But I think they have a different end in sight. But the Buddhist sage and the Taoist sage, they're like first cousins, I think.
Yeah. Now, see, like, I know that when you talk about samsara and everything, the first introduction I had to the whole thing was like more of a Hindu approach to it. Like, I know that the Hindus believe that samsara was like different, I guess you could say, different realms. You know what I mean?
All right.
And like you had the hell realms, and these were actual like different realms of existence. You know what I mean? And like you would have, I think it's six of them, I believe.
Well, I don't know a lot about Hindu mythology, but I do know that a lot of the words used in Buddhism come from like Pali or Sanskrit. They were later writers started putting it into Sanskrit, kind of like the way we'd put stuff into Latin to make it more official looking.
Mm-hmm.
But so like I know in Hinduism they use the word Dhamma or Dharma
Mm-hmm.
as a teaching, a way of doing things. So there was a story in Hinduism about there was this flood threatening a village, and so all the Hindus come out and uh, they have this idea. Again, this has to do with social stability, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can fulfill the Dhamma of your caste, which was basically your society, your race, they consider these different races, your tribe, your group, then you will have great power, and whoever has kept the Dhamma of their caste perfectly attains to the certain level of spiritual power and can turn back the flood. So they got all the people out on the riverbank. You might have heard the story, and the highest ranking Brahmin priest comes out, and
Mm-hmm.
he says, I am a Brahmin. Da, 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 I kept the Dhamma, da, da, and I command the water to go back. Nothing happens. Like, all right, well, he didn't keep the Dhamma very well, did he? So they go, the next guy up, great warrior. I'm a warrior. I've kept the Kshatriya caste, and I've got my Dhamma. Turn back the flood. Doesn't work. So they go through everybody. The greengrocer, I have gone, the Dhamma of a greengrocer, because it doesn't matter so much as what your rank is as to whether you've kept the rules right, right? So finally, they come to the last person. It's the town whore. And she goes, I have kept the Dhamma of a prostitute, da 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 da. And I use my magic power to turn. And the river turns back. She was the only one who was spiritually advanced enough to turn back the water. And she was the town prostitute. And of course, she was greatly honored and everything. But it just goes to show it doesn't matter what your position in life was, it was whether you fulfilled that Dhamma correctly. Now, in Buddhism, we have the Buddha's Dhamma, the Dhamma.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with the Buddhist path specifically. But it's like we would say the path or the path. The path can just be a path through the woods, or it can be the capital T, capital P path. By which the unwritten part of that is the Buddhist path. So Buddhism uses, Pali and Sanskrit, which were, languages used at that time, or at least the Pali was, or at least something that's very close to what we have as written Pali. I'm not going to get into that because I don't understand it that well myself. Pali is supposedly the language the Buddha spoke. Sanskrit is what a lot of the things got written down in later, because they thought it was a fancier language, and it's the Sanskrit that generally informed the Mahayana schools. Those are the manuscripts that went to China, and then later Japan, and that had a lot of stuff added to it later on. The old thing. It's like, well, the Buddha actually said this 800 years ago, but you weren't ready for it. We just found it now, though. He wrote it, put it away, gave it to this guy with a snake tail. I trust him.
Yes.
The Naga.
Yeah, I got acquainted with the word syncretism is what it is. It's like as time went by, they just kind of like synchronized, and like
Yeah.
the one thing I noticed with Buddhism, especially when it comes to China and then into Japan, is they just synchronized with every single one of those pagan beliefs. There really wasn't very much conflict. They might have had their
Oh, no, no.
differences.
Buddhism doesn't mind. When Buddhism comes in somewhere and you get Buddhists start showing up and people start practicing Buddhism, there's nothing in Buddhism that says you're supposed to stop going to church or stop doing your religion. That's not the point of Buddhism. So they don't tell people that there are no gods or your spirits are wrong or they're devils or this or that. But
Mm-hmm.
you start looking at them through Buddhist lenses. And of course, these are ideas that you have. So as you become a practicing Buddhist, these other ideas are going to inform. So on that folk level, yeah, you tend to syncretize these things because, why not? No, it's like, well, I've got this knowledge. Oh, I've got this other new knowledge, and people put it together. But yeah, I don't think Buddhism is really hostile to other people's religions. Other people's religions are sometimes very hostile to Buddhism.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But yeah, the I think that's a very natural occurrence, and I've heard stories that you see that with like in my friend that lived in Burma for a long time. You see that with certain Burmese customs. I've heard the Thais are the same way. It's just a lot more noticeable the further away you get in time and space from Iron Age, Northern India, where all
Mm-hmm.
this started. And especially when you get places with different climates, different foods, different social customs. I've talked before about when, the Buddhist monks are not supposed to work with their hands. They are not supposed to do anything to grow food. They're only allowed to take what's given to them. They're only allowed to eat before noon, and this and very strict rules about this. They have to beg for their food, but they get to China, and 20 monks coming out of the monastery walking through the village looking for food. They're just told, go get a job, go grow your own food. We don't have it wasn't part of the culture. So Buddhist monks in China had to start growing their own food. And I think I've talked about this before. This is where the vegetarian diet came in,
Mm-hmm.
started coming into vogue because the monks obviously couldn't engage in any kind of domestic animal raising, no animal husbandry. So they just grew vegetables, and their diet was vegetable. Um, there's no there's no rule that says you have to be a vegetarian in Buddhism, but that became a rule for a lot of Buddhists in further East Asia, simply because of the conditions that fostered the growth of Buddhism in China and later Japan. And there's nothing wrong with the vegetarian diet. I don't think it's particularly healthy, and I've gotten into arguments with vegans and vegetarians about this. I've been a vegetarian myself too. I think you can make very good ethical arguments about not eating meat. All you have to do is say, "Hey, I don't want to hurt the little animal," and there you go. But from a Buddhist standpoint, if the animal's already dead, there's no bad karma involved in eating meat, and you don't want food to go to waste.
Yeah.
The Buddha was concerned again and again with food, with feeding. That's a big thing in Buddhism. We when we cling to things, we feed on everything. That's the first thing in the Buddhist catechism when they teach young people is say, what is one? One is all creatures feed. We feed emotionally. We feed physically. When we're in a relationship, most of our relationships are we feed on each other. You get involved with someone's like, all right, you're going to feed on me and I'm going to feed on you. That's the secret of a successful marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
We feed on each other emotionally, spiritually, and we feed on things. And feeding means destruction in a certain sense. So any kind of consumption is going to involve destruction, but also rebuilding, construction. You know,
Yep.
so yeah, so it's karma is very direct in Buddhism when it's properly understood. It's like when people say, well, you shouldn't buy meat because it's contributing to this and that. It's like, no, what matters is I am not killing anything. Like, well, you're contributing to that. No, this is all in your mind. This is all imagination.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not demonstrably positively true.